The moment Priscilla Evans saw the panic in the bride's eyes at the hotel bar, she knew exactly what was about to happen, and she was already reaching for her emergency sewing kit before the woman's dress strap snapped completely. Within seconds, Priscilla had whisked the crying bride into the ladies' room and was working her magic with needle and thread, transforming what could have been a disaster into just another wedding day hiccup. That impromptu rescue led to 3 referrals, which led to her finally being able to quit her day job at the flower shop and launch her own wedding planning business 6 months ago. Now, standing in the marble lobby of Grayson Industries headquarters, Priscilla wondered if she had dressed appropriately. Her navy blazer and cream blouse felt suddenly cheap compared to the gleaming surfaces and expensive art surrounding her. The receptionist had barely looked up when she announced herself, just waved vaguely toward the elevator with a bored expression. 52nd floor, Mr. Grayson is expecting you. The elevator ride felt endless. Priscilla checked her portfolio for the 3rd time, making sure all her sample books and vendor lists were in order. Landing Wesley Grayson as a client could change everything for her fledgling business. The man was a legend in commercial real estate development, had his face on the cover of Forbes twice in the last year, and apparently was getting married to some socialite whose family owned half the vineyards in Napa Valley. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sprawling office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A sharp-looking assistant in her 50s stood waiting. "Miss Evans, I'm Margaret. Mr. Grayson is finishing a call. Please have a seat." Priscilla perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She tried not to stare at the view, tried to look like she belonged here. Through the glass walls of the corner office, she could see a tall figure pacing while talking on the phone, one hand running through dark hair in what looked like frustration. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Margaret kept typing, unbothered. Priscilla was just starting to wonder if she should say something when the office door opened. Wesley Grayson was taller than she expected from his photos, easily 6'2", with broad shoulders filling out his charcoal suit. His dark hair was slightly disheveled from whatever phone call had occupied him, and his blue eyes carried a weariness that suggested he had not been sleeping well. He looked like he was in his early 30s, maybe 33 or 34, with the kind of sharp jawline that belonged on magazine covers. "Miss Evans, thank you for coming." His handshake was firm, professional. "I apologize for the wait. My lawyer was on the line with some contract issues." "No problem at all, Mr. Grayson. Wesley, please." He gestured her into his office. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." His office was even more impressive up close. The desk was a massive piece of dark wood that looked antique, probably worth a fortune. Photos lined one shelf, showing Wesley at various construction sites, shaking hands with politicians, standing beside buildings under construction. "So," Wesley said, settling into his chair while Priscilla took the seat across from him, "I need a wedding planner." "My fiancée, Vanessa, was handling everything herself, but her schedule has gotten completely overwhelming. Fashion Week in Paris, then some charity gala circuit, and now apparently she is consulting on a line of handbags. Honestly, I cannot keep track." He rubbed his temples. "The wedding is in 4 months. June 15th. Is that timeline feasible?" 4 months is tight but definitely manageable," Priscilla said, pulling out her tablet. "I have helped plan weddings in less time. The key is having a clear vision and being decisive about vendors." "Do you and Vanessa have a guest count in mind? 350. Maybe 400. Wesley leaned back in his chair. "Vanessa has a very specific vision, very elegant, very classic. She has been collecting inspiration photos for years, apparently. She wants the ceremony at the Cathedral of Saints and the reception at the Belmore Estate. Priscilla typed notes quickly. Both excellent venues. Have you secured them yet? Vanessa booked them 18 months ago. Smart woman. Priscilla looked up from her tablet. What about your vision, Wesley? What do you want from your wedding day? He blinked, seeming caught off guard by the question. What do I want? Yes, it's your day too. What matters to you? Wesley was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on the desk. I suppose I just want Vanessa to be happy, and for everything to go smoothly. I want our families to enjoy themselves. Beyond that, he shrugged. I build buildings, Miss Evans. I understand concrete and steel and architectural drawings. Flowers and centerpieces and color palettes are not exactly my area of expertise. Well, you are hiring me to be the expert, Priscilla said with a smile. But I still need to know what you care about. Is there music that matters to you? Food you love? Any family traditions you want to honor? My mother always talked about orange blossoms, Wesley said slowly. At her wedding. She said the scent was incredible. She passed away 3 years ago, so she will not be there, but maybe something like that would be nice. Priscilla made a note, her heart softening. Orange blossoms. I can absolutely work that in. I'm so sorry about your mother. Thank you. Wesley's expression had shifted, become more guarded. So, your rates. Margaret sent me your proposal. They spent the next 20 minutes discussing logistics, payment schedules, and Priscilla's process. Wesley was sharp, asking good questions about vendor relationships and contingency planning. Despite his claim that weddings were not his expertise, he clearly understood how to evaluate a business proposal. I think we have a deal, Wesley said finally, extending his hand again. When can you start? Immediately. I would like to schedule a meeting with you and Vanessa together as soon as possible, this week if she has time. I will have Margaret coordinate with Vanessa's assistant. Wesley stood and Priscilla gathered her things. As they walked toward the door, he paused. I should mention Vanessa can be particular about things, very particular. I hope that would not be an issue. Most of my brides are particular, Priscilla assured him. It's part of the job. I want her to have exactly the wedding she has been dreaming of. Good. Wesley opened the door for her. I appreciate you taking this on with such a compressed timeline. Priscilla left the office feeling energized. This was her biggest client by far, the kind of wedding that would get featured in magazines and lead to dozens more bookings. She could finally move out of her tiny studio apartment, maybe even hire an assistant of her own. The meeting with Vanessa was scheduled for 2 days later at her apartment in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Priscilla arrived 15 minutes early, as always, and was buzzed up by a doorman who looked her over with obvious skepticism. Vanessa's apartment was stunning, all white furniture and glass accents and abstract art that probably cost more than Priscilla's car. The woman herself was even more intimidating in person than in the society page photos Priscilla had studied. Tall and willowy, with honey blonde hair pulled back in a flawless chignon, Vanessa wore what looked like designer loungewear that probably cost $1,000. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women managed, barely any makeup but absolutely perfect. You must be Priscilla. Vanessa's handshake was limp, her smile not reaching her eyes. Wesley said he hired someone. I suppose I should be grateful he actually took initiative for once. That set the tone for the entire meeting. Vanessa had 3 enormous binders of inspiration photos, fabric swatches, and detailed notes about every aspect of the wedding. She knew exactly what she wanted. Ivory and champagne color palette, garden roses and peonies, a 10-tier cake from a specific patisserie in Paris, Vera Wang gown, custom tuxedos, live orchestra, specific lighting design, and on and on. "I have been planning this since I was a little girl," Vanessa said, flipping through pages with manicured fingers. "Everything needs to be perfect. Absolutely perfect. No mistakes, no substitutions, no compromises." "I understand," Priscilla said, taking notes as fast as she could. "Your vision is very clear, which actually makes my job easier. Have you selected your bridesmaids yet?" "8. All confirmed. I have their measurements already." Vanessa pulled out another folder. "They will wear champagne silk. The designer is already working on them." They went through the details for 2 hours. Vanessa had opinions about everything, from the font on the programs to the type of candles in the centerpieces. She was demanding, certainly, but Priscilla had dealt with demanding brides before. What bothered her more was the way Vanessa talked about Wesley, with a casual dismissiveness that felt wrong. "Wesley does not care about any of this," Vanessa said when Priscilla asked about his preferences. "He is barely involved. As long as he shows up in a tux and says his vows, that is all that matters. This wedding is really about the aesthetic, the experience. Wesley understands that." Priscilla bit back a response. It was not her place to judge their dynamic. Plenty of couples had different levels of investment in the wedding planning process. "I do think it would be helpful to have at least one more meeting with both of you," Priscilla said carefully, "just to make sure you are aligned on the timeline and any major decisions." Vanessa waved a hand. "Fine. Whatever. But honestly, I have made all the decisions already. You just need to execute them." Over the next few weeks, Priscilla threw herself into wedding planning with the same intensity she brought to every project. She contacted vendors, secured contracts, created detailed timelines, and coordinated with the venues. She met with the florist 3 times to perfect the arrangements, worked with the caterer on the menu, and spent an entire afternoon with the lighting designer mapping out the reception space. Wesley was surprisingly involved for someone his fiancée claimed did not care. He responded to emails quickly, gave thoughtful feedback on the few choices where Priscilla needed his input, and even attended a cake tasting that Vanessa was too busy to make. "She trusts you to pick something delicious," Wesley had said with a slight grimace as they sampled the 8th flavor. "And honestly, I think my palate is about done. Do people really need this many cake options?" "Says the man who just had 3 servings of the chocolate raspberry," Priscilla teased. "That one was exceptional." Wesley grinned, and Priscilla noticed how different he looked when he smiled, younger and less burdened. "Okay, let's go with that one. Chocolate raspberry with champagne buttercream between the layers. Good choice." They were walking out of the patisserie when Wesley's phone rang. Priscilla could not hear the other end of the conversation, but she watched his expression shift from relaxed to tense. "Vanessa, we talked about this. The investors are flying in specifically for this meeting. I cannot reschedule." He listened for a moment. "I understand the gala is important to you, but this acquisition has been in the works for 6 months. Another pause. "Fine, yes, we will talk about it tonight." He ended the call and stood there for a moment staring at his phone. "Everything okay?" Priscilla asked quietly. "Fine." Wesley's jaw was tight. "Just some scheduling conflicts, the usual." He looked at her. "Thank you for handling all of this." "I know Vanessa can be intense, and I appreciate how professional you have been." "It's my job," Priscilla smiled. "And honestly, I love what I do. There is something magical about weddings, about watching 2 people commit to building a life together." "You are a romantic." Wesley said it like an observation, not a judgment. "Guilty." Priscilla started walking toward where she had parked. "I know it is probably silly given that half of marriages end in divorce, and the wedding industry is ridiculously commercialized, but I cannot help it. I believe in love." I believe in promises that matter. That is not silly. Wesley walked beside her. I think that is why you are good at this. You actually care. Something about the way he said it made Priscilla glance over. Wesley was looking at the city skyline, his hands in his pockets, and there was a sadness in his expression that tugged at her. You need anything else from me this week? She asked. I have the meeting with the band on Thursday, and the first dress fitting for Vanessa is Friday. No, I think we are good, although… Wesley paused at the corner. Would you be available for a venue walk-through next Tuesday? I want to see the Belmore estate in person, get a sense of the layout. I know Vanessa already approved it, but I like to see these things myself. Of course. I will meet you there. Say 2 o'clock. Perfect. Priscilla drove home that afternoon thinking about Wesley Grayson. There was something about him that did not quite fit with the Wesley Vanessa described. Vanessa painted him as a workaholic who was emotionally detached, barely present even when they were together. But the man Priscilla was getting to know seemed thoughtful and engaged, asking questions and actually listening to the answers. He remembered details, followed up on things, showed genuine interest. Maybe that was just his business training, she told herself. Successful CEOs were good at making people feel heard. It did not mean anything. The Belmore estate was breathtaking. 30 acres of manicured gardens, a Georgian mansion with marble columns, and a ballroom that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Priscilla arrived early to meet with the estate manager and confirm all the logistics. The ceremony would be in the Rose Garden, assuming weather cooperated, with the reception in the ballroom and cocktail hour on the terrace. Wesley showed up right on time, dressed more casually than she had seen him before in dark jeans and a gray Henley. He looked more relaxed too, smiling as he walked up the stone path. This place is incredible, he said by way of greeting. I can see why Vanessa chose it. They spent an hour walking the grounds. Priscilla pointed out where the ceremony arch would go, where guest seating would be arranged, how the string quartet would be positioned. Wesley asked practical questions about parking and accessibility and weather contingencies. In the ballroom, they discussed the floor plan for the reception. The head table will be here, facing the room, Priscilla explained, gesturing. Then the band on this wall, dance floor in the center, dining tables surrounding. We will have a separate cake table over here, and the bar will be set up in the adjoining room. Wesley walked the space, nodding. What about the toasts? Will there be a microphone? Yes, we will have a sound system set up. Your best man and Vanessa's maid of honor will speak, obviously. Did you want to say anything? I had not thought about it. Wesley looked uncomfortable. Is that expected? It is your wedding. You can do whatever feels right. He was quiet for a moment, staring out the tall windows at the gardens. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think this is going to be a good wedding? The question surprised her. What do you mean? Vanessa has planned every detail. It is going to be beautiful. Beautiful, yes. Wesley turned to face her. But good. Do you think people are going to feel something? Or is it just going to be pretty decorations and expensive food? Priscilla chose her words carefully. I think weddings reflect the couple getting married. If you and Vanessa love each other, if you are excited about building a life together, people will feel that. The decorations are just window dressing. Right. Wesley nodded slowly. That makes sense. They finished the walk-through and headed back to the parking area. Wesley had parked next to her, his sleek black Tesla looking out of place next to her aging Honda. Thank you for doing this, he said. I know it is probably not necessary with everything else you are juggling, but it helped me visualize the day. I am glad. Priscilla unlocked her car. I will send you the updated timeline tonight. We are right on schedule with everything. Priscilla, Wesley said as she was opening her door. "Can I ask you something else?" "Sure." "Why did you become a wedding planner?" She laughed. "That is a random question. I am curious. You clearly care about this work. There must be a reason." Priscilla leaned against her car, thinking. "My parents had a terrible marriage, fighting constantly, making each other miserable. They finally divorced when I was 15, and it was honestly a relief. But right before the divorce was finalized, I went to my cousin's wedding, and I watched her marry her best friend, this guy she had known since they were kids. The way they looked at each other, the vows they wrote, the joy in that room. It was the first time I realized that marriage could be something different, something beautiful. I wanted to help create those moments for other people." Wesley's expression softened. "That is a good reason. What about you? Why commercial real estate?" "My grandfather started this company with nothing but a loan and a lot of nerve," Wesley said. "Built it from the ground up. My father expanded it, turned it into something major. When I was a kid, they would take me to construction sites, show me blueprints, explain how buildings came together. I loved the idea of creating something permanent, something that would last. When my father had his heart attack and I had to take over 5 years ago, it felt like honoring them both. That is a lot of pressure." "It is." Wesley looked tired again. "Sometimes I wonder if I am doing it justice. If I am building the right things for the right reasons, or if I am just going through the motions." Before Priscilla could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. "I need to take this. Thank you again, Priscilla." She watched him answer the call as he walked to his car, his shoulders tensing immediately. Through her open window, she heard fragments of the conversation. "Vanessa, I told you I had the venue walk through today. No, I did not forget about your mother's luncheon. I said I would try to make it." Priscilla started her car and pulled away, feeling oddly troubled. Something was not right with Wesley and Vanessa. She had planned enough weddings to recognize when a couple was genuinely excited about their marriage versus when they were just excited about the wedding. Vanessa seemed thrilled about the event itself, about the photos and the dress and the spectacle. But she barely mentioned Wesley, barely seemed interested in him as a person. And Wesley. Priscilla was not sure what Wesley felt. He went through all the motions, said all the right things, but there was a hollowness behind it. "Not your business," she reminded herself firmly. "You are the wedding planner, not a relationship counselor. Do your job and stay out of their personal lives." But over the following weeks, staying detached became harder. Priscilla worked with Vanessa almost daily, and the woman's personality grew more difficult with each interaction. Nothing was ever quite right. The roses were too pink, then too white. The menu was too adventurous, then too boring. The invitation font was too modern, then too traditional. Priscilla revised and adjusted and accommodated, maintaining her professional smile even when Vanessa's criticism grew personal. "I thought Wesley hired someone competent," Vanessa had snapped during one particularly brutal meeting about the table linens. "These samples are completely wrong. Were you even listening when I explained my vision? I have 3 different options here that all match the specifications you gave me," Priscilla said calmly. "But if none of these work, I can reach out to other vendors." "Obviously, you need to reach out to other vendors. This is unacceptable." Meanwhile, Wesley continued to be unfailingly kind and professional. He checked in regularly, asked how things were going, and actually seemed to care about the answer. When Priscilla mentioned she was struggling to find a calligrapher who could match Vanessa's exacting standards, Wesley spent his lunch hour calling in favors and connected her with an artist who normally had a year-long waiting list. "She owes me from a charity auction thing," Wesley explained. "She said she can fit you in next week. Thank you so much. You did not have to do that." I know Vanessa has been tough on you, Wesley said quietly. I appreciate you putting up with it. They were having coffee at a shop near Priscilla's office, one of their increasingly frequent check-ins that had evolved beyond just wedding planning. Somehow, over the past several weeks, they had slipped into something approaching friendship. It is fine, really, Priscilla said. I have dealt with difficult clients before. She was not always like this. Wesley stared into his cup. When we first started dating, she was different, fun, spontaneous. We met at a charity gala 4 years ago. She made me laugh, which does not happen often. For a while, things were good. What changed? Wesley was quiet for a long moment. I think we both changed. Or maybe we just realized we wanted different things. She wants the lifestyle, the social status, the image, and I just want to build something meaningful and have a life that feels real. Then why are you getting married? The question hung in the air between them. Wesley looked up, meeting her eyes, and Priscilla saw something raw and uncertain there. Because I made a promise, he said finally. Because she has spent 2 years planning this. Because our families are invested. Because I thought maybe if we got married, things would click back into place. He shook his head. That sounds pathetic when I say it out loud. It sounds human. Priscilla reached across the table, putting her hand over his. Wesley, you do not have to marry someone just because you said you would, if you are not happy, if this is not what you want. What do I want? Wesley laughed bitterly. I am not sure I even know anymore. His phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and his expression shifted to resignation. Vanessa needs me to approve the final design for the programs. I should go. He stood, then paused. Priscilla, thank you for listening, for understanding. Anytime. She watched him leave, her heart heavy. This was exactly what she had warned herself not to do. Getting emotionally involved with clients, caring about their relationships, crossing professional boundaries. But she could not help it. Wesley was genuine and thoughtful and clearly struggling, and every instinct she had was screaming that he was about to make a terrible mistake. The following week brought the first real crisis. Priscilla got a panicked call from the florist at 7 in the morning. The peony supplier just backed out, the florist said without preamble. Apparently their entire crop got some kind of disease. They cannot fulfill any orders for the next 3 months. Priscilla's stomach dropped. Peonies were the centerpiece of Vanessa's floral vision, literally. Every table was supposed to have a massive arrangement featuring them. Okay, Priscilla said, already pulling up her vendor lists. Give me 2 hours. I will find another supplier. She spent the morning on the phone, calling every florist and wholesaler she knew. Peonies in June were always tricky, requiring specialty growing and careful timing. Finally, on her 12th call, she found a supplier in Oregon who could provide what they needed, but at nearly double the original cost. Priscilla did the math. The increase would eat up most of her commission and then some. She could pass the cost on to Wesley and Vanessa, but that would mean going back to them with bad news just 6 weeks before the wedding. Or she could absorb it herself, take the financial hit, and keep everything on track. She spent about 30 seconds deliberating before calling the Oregon supplier back and confirming the order with her business credit card. When Wesley found out 3 days later, he was furious. You did what? He had shown up at her office unannounced, storming in with a printed copy of the invoice. Priscilla, this is $8,000. You cannot just eat this cost. I can and I did. Priscilla looked up from her desk calmly. It is handled. The peonies are secured, the arrangements are on schedule, everything is fine. It is not fine. This was not your responsibility. I am the wedding planner. Making sure everything comes together is literally my responsibility. Wesley put both hands on her desk, leaning forward. I am reimbursing you for this, today. No, you are not, Priscilla. Wesley. She stood up, meeting his eyes. This is my business, my call. I am not going to let your wedding be anything less than perfect because of a supplier issue. Consider it an investment in my reputation. Your reputation is already solid. You do not need to bankrupt yourself to prove anything. I am not bankrupting myself. I am being strategic. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Wesley straightened. You are stubborn, you know that. I have been told. Fine. But I am sending you a bonus when this is all over, a significant one. Wesley, you do not have to. I know I do not have to. I want to. His expression softened. You have gone above and beyond at every turn. You care about this wedding more than. He stopped himself. More than what? Nothing. Forget it. He moved toward the door, then turned back. Are you free Friday night? Priscilla blinked. Why? There is a pre-wedding dinner. Vanessa's family insists on hosting. Small group, just immediate family and wedding party. Vanessa wants you there in case anyone has last-minute questions about logistics. Oh, sure, I can do that. What is the dress code? Cocktail attire. It is at her parents' house in the hills. I will text you the address. The dinner was far more elaborate than Wesley had suggested. Vanessa's parents lived in a mansion that made Wesley's office building look modest. The dining room table seated 20, with crystal chandeliers and formal china, and more silverware than Priscilla knew what to do with. She felt immediately out of place among the designer dresses and expensive jewelry. Her black cocktail dress was nice enough, purchased specifically for client events, but it was clearly off the rack compared to what everyone else was wearing. Wesley found her within minutes of her arrival. He was in a navy suit without a tie, looking uncomfortable despite being surrounded by his future in-laws. You made it, he said, and the relief in his voice was obvious. Come on, let me introduce you around. Vanessa's parents were exactly what Priscilla expected. Wealthy, polished, and slightly cold. Her father owned the vineyard empire. Her mother sat on the boards of half a dozen charities. They looked at Priscilla with polite disinterest when Wesley introduced her as the wedding planner. Then immediately started discussing seating arrangements with barely concealed anxiety about which family members might cause drama. The bridesmaids were Vanessa's childhood friends, women who all looked vaguely similar with their straight blonde hair and expensive manicures. They were pleasant enough, though they mostly talked among themselves about upcoming vacations and shopping trips. Wesley's side was smaller. His father had passed away, his mother too. He had a younger sister, Willa, who was serving as a groomsman because Vanessa insisted on symmetry in the wedding party. Willa was sharp-featured and sharp-tongued, greeting Priscilla with obvious curiosity. So you are the miracle worker keeping this circus on track, Willa said, shaking Priscilla's hand. My brother says you are saving his sanity. I do not know about that, Priscilla laughed. Just doing my job. Well, from what I understand, you have done far more than your job. Willa glanced across the room where Vanessa was holding court with her bridesmaids. Between you and me, I think Wesley hired the wrong woman. Willa, Wesley said sharply, rejoining them with drinks. Behave. I am always behaved. Willa winked at Priscilla. It was nice meeting you. I am sure we will be seeing more of each other. Dinner was an exercise in careful politeness. Vanessa sat at one end of the table with her parents and bridesmaids, laughing loudly and dominating the conversation. Wesley sat at the other end, quieter, nursing his wine and contributing little. Priscilla was seated in the middle, next to Willa, who kept up a running commentary under her breath about the absurdity of the whole event. Notice how they have not spoken to each other all night, Willa murmured, nodding toward Wesley and Vanessa. That is normal for them lately. Maybe they are just busy with different conversations, Priscilla whispered back. You are kind to give them the benefit of the doubt. Willa took a sip of wine. But I have known my brother his whole life. I can tell when he is happy and when he is just going through the motions. This is motions. Priscilla did not know what to say to that. She focused on her salmon, trying to ignore the growing knot in her stomach. After dinner, people drifted into the various sitting rooms and out onto the terrace. Priscilla used the opportunity to slip outside for some air. The view from the terrace was spectacular, the city lights spreading out below like a blanket of stars. Hiding. Wesley's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, tie loosened and looking exhausted. Just getting some air. It is beautiful up here. It is. Wesley came to stand beside her at the railing. Thank you for coming tonight. I know this is outside your normal duties. It is fine. Everyone has been nice. Vanessa barely acknowledged you all evening. Priscilla did not have a good response to that because it was true. Vanessa had not spoken to her once during dinner, had not even looked in her direction. She is busy with her family, Priscilla said diplomatically. She is always busy with something. Wesley's voice was bitter. I cannot remember the last time we had an actual conversation. About anything real, anything that matters. We talk about the wedding, about social obligations, about her schedule, but we do not talk about us, about what we want from our lives, about whether this even makes sense anymore. Wesley. Priscilla turned to face him. If you are having doubts, I am not having doubts, he cut her off. I am having full-blown panic attacks at 3 in the morning wondering what the hell I am doing. Then call it off. The words were out before Priscilla could stop them. Wesley stared at her, his blue eyes wide with shock. What? Call it off, Priscilla repeated, her heart pounding. If you are this unhappy, if you know in your gut that this is wrong, then call it off. Yes, it would be embarrassing. Yes, people would be upset. But that is better than spending the rest of your life in a marriage that makes you miserable. I cannot just, yes, you can. Wesley, I have planned dozens of weddings. I have seen all kinds of couples. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that what you and Vanessa have is not what a marriage should look like. You barely connect. You do not light up when she walks in a room. She does not seem interested in your thoughts or feelings. That is not love. That is not even friendship. That is just two people going through the socially expected motions. Wesley was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. What if I never find something better? What if this is as good as it gets for me? It is not. Priscilla put her hand on his arm. You are kind and thoughtful and genuinely good, Wesley. You deserve someone who sees that. Someone who wants to build a real life with you, not just show you off at galas and society events. Someone like you. The question hung in the air between them. Priscilla felt her breath catch, felt the world narrow to just the two of them standing on this terrace with the city lights below. I should not have said that, Wesley said quickly. I am sorry, that was inappropriate. Wesley, Priscilla, there you are. Vanessa's voice cut through the moment like a knife. She emerged onto the terrace in a cloud of expensive perfume. We need to discuss the rehearsal dinner timeline. My mother has concerns about the schedule. Of course. Priscilla stepped away from Wesley, her professional mask sliding back into place. Let's go inside and go over it. She spent the next hour reviewing schedules and answering questions, all while feeling Wesley's eyes on her from across the room. When she finally left around midnight, her mind was spinning. Someone like you. Had he meant that the way it sounded? Or was she reading too much into a comment from a stressed-out groom having cold feet? More importantly, when had she started having feelings for Wesley Grayson? Somewhere between the cake tasting and the venue walk-through and the coffee shop conversations, she had crossed a line. She cared about him. Not just as a client, not just as a nice person, but as someone she could imagine spending time with. Someone she wanted to spend time with. This was bad. This was very, very bad. Priscilla threw herself into work with renewed intensity over the next few weeks, trying to keep her distance from Wesley while still fulfilling her professional obligations. She communicated mostly by email, kept their interactions brief, and focused strictly on logistics. If Wesley noticed the change, he did not comment on it. The wedding was 3 weeks away when Vanessa called her in a fury. "The dress is wrong," Vanessa said without preamble. "I went for my final fitting and it is completely wrong. The beading is not what I ordered, the train is too short, the whole thing is a disaster." Priscilla's stomach sank. "What did the designer say?" She said, "This is what I approved, but I did not approve this. This is not my dress." "Okay, let me call her and see what happened." "I am sure we can fix this." "Fix it? The wedding is 3 weeks away, Priscilla. How exactly are you going to fix this?" "I will figure it out, just give me some time." She spent the rest of the day on the phone with the designer, who insisted that Vanessa had indeed approved the final design after 3 rounds of modifications. The beading had been changed at Vanessa's request 2 months ago, and she had signed off on the shorter train to allow for easier movement during the reception. "I have the approval emails right here," the designer said, clearly frustrated. She confirmed everything. This is what she wanted. Priscilla suspected the truth was somewhere in the middle. Vanessa had probably approved the changes without really looking at them, too busy with other things to focus. But that did not solve the immediate problem. "Can we add more beading?" Priscilla asked. "Extend the train in 3 weeks." "Maybe. It would be rush work and it would be expensive." "How expensive?" The number made Priscilla wince. But she negotiated, called in favors, and eventually got the designer to agree to the modifications for a price that was merely painful rather than impossible. When she called Vanessa back with the solution, the bride did not even thank her. "Well, obviously you need to fix it. That is your job, and I should not have to pay extra for your mistake." "Vanessa, this was not my, just handle it, Priscilla." The line went dead. Priscilla sat there for a moment, fighting the urge to throw her phone across the room. She was professionally accommodating, patient with difficult clients, but Vanessa was pushing every boundary. Her phone rang again. Wesley's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "I heard about the dress situation," Wesley said. "Vanessa just called me ranting. I am sorry she took it out on you. It is fine." "It is not fine. None of this is fine," he sighed heavily. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you." "Wesley, I do not think that is a good idea, please. Just coffee. 30 minutes. Against her better judgment, Priscilla agreed. They met at the same coffee shop they had been to before, quieter now in the late afternoon lull. Wesley looked terrible, like he had not slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Are you okay?" Priscilla asked as soon as she sat down. "No," Wesley laughed without humor. "I am really not okay. Priscilla, I cannot do this. I cannot marry Vanessa." Priscilla's heart jumped into her throat. "What?" "I have been thinking about what you said at the dinner, about calling it off, about not spending my life in the wrong marriage, and you were right. You were completely right. This is wrong. It has been wrong for a long time. I just did not want to admit it." "Wesley, this is a huge decision. You need to be sure." "I am sure." He looked at her directly, and the conviction in his eyes was clear. "I have been lying to myself for months, maybe years, telling myself that Vanessa and I were just going through a rough patch, that things would get better. But they would not get better. We do not want the same things. We do not even really like each other anymore. We are just 2 people who look good together on paper." "What are you going to do?" "I am going to tell her the truth. Today, I am calling off the wedding." "She is going to be devastated." "She is going to be angry," Wesley corrected. "And embarrassed." but devastated. I do not think so. I think part of her knows this is wrong too. We have both been too proud or too scared to admit it. Priscilla did not know what to say. Part of her was relieved, knowing Wesley was making the right choice. But part of her was panicking, thinking about the enormous, expensive wedding that was supposed to happen in 3 weeks. What about all the planning? She asked. The vendors, the venue, the guests. I will cancel everything. And I will pay you for your full fee plus damages, obviously. I know this puts you in a terrible position. I do not care about the money, Priscilla said honestly. I care about you. I want you to be happy. Wesley reached across the table and took her hand. I know you do. That is one of the things he stopped himself, shaking his head. One of the things I really appreciate about you. He had been about to say love. Priscilla knew it as surely as she knew her own name. Wesley, she said softly, we should not, I know. He pulled his hand back. I know we should not. You are my wedding planner and I am supposed to be getting married and this is completely inappropriate. But I need you to know something. These past few months working with you, talking to you, getting to know you, that has been the best part of my days. You make me laugh. You make me think. You remind me that life is supposed to feel like something, not just be a series of obligations and appearances. I feel the same way, Priscilla admitted, her heart racing. But we cannot act on this, Wesley. Not now, not when everything is so complicated. You need to end things with Vanessa because it is the right thing for you, not because of me. You are right. Wesley stood up. I am going to her apartment now. I am going to tell her the truth. And then I am going to spend the next few weeks fixing the mess I have created. Call me after. Priscilla said, I want to know you are okay. I will. He left, and Priscilla sat there with her untouched coffee, her mind reeling. Wesley was calling off the wedding. The enormous, elaborate, expensive wedding she had spent 3 months planning. It should have felt like a disaster, like a professional failure. Instead, all she felt was relief and hope. That tiny, dangerous spark of hope that maybe, once the dust settled, there could be something between them, something real. Wesley called her 3 hours later. His voice was flat, emotionally wrung out. It is done, I told her. How did she take it? About as well as expected. Lots of screaming. She threw a vase at me, which honestly I probably deserved, but ultimately she did not seem surprised. I think she has been as unhappy as I have been, just neither of us wanted to admit defeat. I am sorry, Priscilla said softly. Breakups are hard even when they are the right thing. Yeah. Wesley was quiet for a moment. I need to start making calls, canceling vendors, notifying guests. It is going to be a nightmare. Let me help. I can contact the vendors at least. That is part of my job. Priscilla, you do not have to. I want to. Please. Let me help. They spent the next week in crisis management mode. Priscilla contacted every vendor, explaining the situation and negotiating cancellation terms. Some were understanding, others less so. The venue kept the deposit but returned the remaining balance. The florist was willing to cancel without penalty given the circumstances. The caterer, designer, and band all charged cancellation fees, but nothing catastrophic. Wesley handled notifying the guests, a task that involved hundreds of awkward phone calls and even more awkward explanations. He did not give details, just said that he and Vanessa had mutually decided not to move forward with the marriage. Priscilla did not see him in person during that week. They communicated mostly by phone and email, keeping things professional and efficient. But there was an undercurrent to every interaction, an awareness of what remained unspoken between them. Finally, 8 days after the cancellation, Wesley called and asked if she would meet him. Not at the coffee shop, but at a park near the waterfront. I need to get out of my office, he explained. I have been dealing with lawyers and accountants all week. I just need some fresh air and a friendly face." Priscilla found him sitting on a bench overlooking the water, feeding ducks with a bag of old bread. He looked better than he had the week before, less exhausted, though there was still a sadness around his eyes. "Hey," she said, sitting beside him. "Hey," he handed her some bread. "Want to help? Apparently I am that cliché now, the guy feeding ducks alone in the park." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, tossing bread to the eager ducks crowding the shoreline. "I talked to Vanessa yesterday," Wesley said eventually. "Really talked for the first time in probably a year. She is already dating someone else, one of her friends from the fashion world. Apparently they have been getting close for months. Are you okay with that?" "I am relieved, honestly. It confirms that calling off the wedding was the right choice for both of us. We were not in love anymore. Maybe we never really were. We were just comfortable, convenient for each other." "That is a mature way to look at it." Wesley turned to face her. "Priscilla, I need to tell you something. These past few months getting to know you, I have been falling for you. And I know the timing is terrible. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But I need you to know that you have made me feel more in the past 3 months than Vanessa did in 4 years. You listen when I talk. You challenge me. You make me want to be better." Priscilla's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. "Wesley, I have feelings for you too. I have been fighting them because they seemed so impossible, so inappropriate, but they are there. So what do we do about it?" "I think we take it slow," Priscilla said carefully. "You just ended a 4-year relationship. You need time to process that, to figure out what you want. And I need to know that I am not just a rebound, not just the person who happened to be there during a difficult time." "You are not a rebound," Wesley said firmly. "You are the person who woke me up, who made me realize what I was settling for, who showed me what genuine connection feels like." "Then prove it." Priscilla smiled. "Take some time, get your life sorted out, and in a few months, if you still feel the same way, call me. Ask me on a real date, one that has nothing to do with weddings or business meetings or professional obligations." Wesley looked like he wanted to argue, but then he nodded slowly. "Okay, that is fair. That is more than fair considering everything. But Priscilla, I am going to call you. Nothing is going to change how I feel about you. We will see," she said softly. They sat by the water for another hour, talking about everything except relationships and weddings. Wesley told her about his plans to expand the company into sustainable development, about a project he was excited about that involved converting old warehouses into affordable housing. Priscilla talked about her business, about wanting to eventually transition from just planning weddings to also doing corporate events and large-scale celebrations. It felt natural, easy, like they had known each other for years instead of months. When they finally said goodbye, Wesley hugged her, and Priscilla let herself sink into it for just a moment before pulling away. "A few months," she reminded him. "A few months," he agreed. The next 3 months were among the strangest of Priscilla's life. She threw herself into her business, taking on new clients and building her reputation. The story of Wesley Grayson's canceled wedding had made the society pages, but Priscilla's professionalism in handling the situation had actually earned her praise. She got several new bookings from people who were impressed by how discreetly she had managed the crisis. Wesley kept his distance, as promised, but he sent occasional texts. A photo of a sunset with the caption, "Made me think of you." An article about wedding trends with a comment about how ridiculous some of them were. Nothing demanding, nothing pressuring, just little reminders that he was thinking of her. Priscilla found herself looking forward to those messages more than she wanted to admit. She heard through mutual acquaintances that Wesley was doing well. He had taken a 2-week vacation to Europe, his first real time off in years. He was focusing on his sustainable development project with renewed energy. His sister Willa reported to anyone who would listen that she had never seen him happier. 4 months after the canceled wedding, Priscilla was in her office updating client files when her phone rang. Wesley's name flashed on the screen, and her heart jumped. "Hi," she answered, trying to sound casual. "Hi. So, I know we said a few months, and it has been 4, which I think technically qualifies as a few." Wesley sounded nervous. "I was wondering if you would have dinner with me. A real dinner. A real date. No wedding planning, no business discussions, just you and me." Priscilla found herself grinning. "I would love that. Yeah. How about Saturday? 7 o'clock, I will pick you up. Saturday works." Wesley took her to a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood Priscilla had never been to before. It was the kind of place locals loved but tourists never found, with checkered tablecloths and a menu written entirely in Italian on a chalkboard. "I hope this is okay," Wesley said as they sat down. "It is not fancy, but the food is incredible. My mother used to bring me here when I was a kid. It is perfect." They ordered wine and pasta and talked for hours. Wesley told her about his vacation, about standing in the Sistine Chapel and finally understanding why people cared so much about art. Priscilla talked about a recent wedding she had planned that went hilariously wrong when the ring bearer decided to eat the rings and they had to rush to the hospital. They laughed until they cried, drawing amused looks from other diners. "I missed this," Wesley said as they were finishing dessert. "I missed you. These past few months, I kept thinking of things I wanted to tell you, jokes I wanted to share. It was torture not being able to just call you. You could have called. I wanted to respect your boundaries. You were right that I needed time to process everything. To be really, genuinely single and figure out what I wanted from my life." "And what do you want?" Wesley reached across the table and took her hand. "I want to build things that matter. I want to spend time with people who challenge me and make me think. I want to laugh more and stress less. And I want to see where this goes with you, because I have never felt this way about anyone." "I want that too," Priscilla said softly. "I want all of that." They left the restaurant and walked through the neighborhood, past brownstones with window boxes full of flowers and small parks where children played. Wesley told her about his plans for the affordable housing project, his eyes lighting up as he described the architectural designs and community features. Priscilla found herself falling even harder for this man who cared so much about creating something meaningful. "Can I kiss you?" Wesley asked when they finally reached her apartment building. "You better," Priscilla said, and then his lips were on hers and the whole world narrowed to just that moment, just the feeling of his hands cupping her face and the gentleness mixed with certainty in his kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "So," Wesley said, "second date, definitely." They fell into a relationship with the same ease they had fallen into friendship. Wesley took her to construction sites and showed her blueprints, explaining his vision with infectious enthusiasm. Priscilla brought him to weddings as her +1, and he proved surprisingly helpful with last-minute crises and heavy lifting. They cooked dinner together, binge-watched terrible reality shows, and stayed up late talking about everything from childhood memories to philosophical questions about the meaning of success. Willa approved immediately and vocally. "Finally," she said when Wesley brought Priscilla to family dinner 2 months into their relationship. "Finally, my brother is with someone who actually gets him. Vanessa was like a beautiful, expensive robot. You are an actual human being." "Thanks, I think," Priscilla laughed. "It is definitely a compliment. Trust me." 6 months into their relationship, Wesley invited Priscilla to the grand opening of his affordable housing project. The converted warehouse was stunning, with exposed brick and huge windows and modern fixtures balanced by original architectural details. Families were already moving in, excited about the community gardens and playgrounds and common spaces designed to bring people together. "This is amazing," Priscilla said, looking around. "You should be so proud." "I am," Wesley said. "This feels real, you know. Like I am building something that actually helps people, not just making rich investors richer. Your grandfather and father would be proud too." Wesley pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Thank you for supporting this, for understanding why it matters to me. Of course. This is who you are. Why would I not support it?" That night, lying in Wesley's bed with the city lights streaming through the windows, Priscilla thought about how much her life had changed in just over a year. This time last year, she had been scrambling for clients and worried about making rent. Now her business was thriving, she had hired an assistant, and she was in love with the most genuine, caring man she had ever met. "What are you thinking about?" Wesley asked, running his fingers through her hair. "How happy I am. How unexpected all of this is. Good unexpected or bad unexpected. The best unexpected." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "A year ago, if someone had told me I would fall in love with a client whose wedding I was planning, I would have said they were crazy." "To be fair, you did not fall in love with a client whose wedding you planned," Wesley pointed out. "You fell in love with a client whose wedding you unplanned." Priscilla laughed. "True. Much more ethical that way." "Although technically," Wesley said thoughtfully, "you did end up planning our wedding, just not the one either of us expected. We are not getting married." "Not yet," Wesley grinned at her expression. "What, too soon?" "Way too soon." But secretly, in her heart, Priscilla was already imagining it. A small ceremony, nothing like the elaborate affair she had planned for Wesley and Vanessa. Something intimate and meaningful, focused on the commitment rather than the spectacle. Something that felt like them. Wesley proposed 14 months after their first official date. He took her back to the park where they had fed the ducks, where he had first told her how he felt. It was sunset, the water glowing gold, and he got down on one knee with a vintage ring that had belonged to his mother. "Priscilla Evans, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me," Wesley said. "You challenge me, support me, make me laugh, and remind me every day what really matters in life. I want to build a future with you. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Priscilla said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." The wedding was nothing like the one Priscilla had planned for Wesley and Vanessa. They got married in the garden of Wesley's childhood home with just 75 guests, all people they truly loved and wanted to celebrate with. Priscilla wore a simple silk dress and carried a bouquet of orange blossoms, their scent filling the air. Wesley cried during his vows, telling her she had saved him from a life half lived. Willa served as the best woman, giving a speech that had everyone simultaneously laughing and crying. The reception was in the same garden, with string lights and long family-style tables, and dancing under the stars. No elaborate centerpieces or carefully coordinated color palettes, just good food and great music, and the feeling of genuine joy that Priscilla had always believed weddings should have. "This is perfect," Wesley whispered as they swayed together during their first dance. "You are perfect. We are perfect," Priscilla corrected. "Together." 3 years later, Priscilla was sitting in her home office, now expanded and professionally decorated, reviewing contracts for upcoming weddings. Her business had grown significantly, and she now had 2 full-time assistants and was considering hiring a third. She specialized in smaller, more intimate weddings, having discovered that those were the ones that brought her the most joy. "Mom, Mom," a small voice called from downstairs. Dad says lunch is ready. Priscilla smiled, saving her work. She headed downstairs to find Wesley in the kitchen with their 2-year-old daughter, Penelope, who was covered in pasta sauce and grinning proudly. "I helped," Penelope announced. "I can see that," Priscilla said, kissing her daughter's sauce-covered cheek. "Good job, baby." Wesley caught her eye over Penelope's head and smiled that smile that still made her heart skip, even after 4 years of marriage. They had bought this house together last year, a Victorian in a family-friendly neighborhood with a huge backyard and enough space for both of them to have home offices. Penelope's room was painted soft yellow, filled with books and toys, and already showing signs of her creative personality. "How is wedding planning going?" Wesley asked as they sat down to eat. "Good. I have 3 this month, all of them couples who seem genuinely excited about getting married, not just throwing a party. Those are my favorite." "You always know," Wesley said, "whether couples are going to make it. You could see that Vanessa and I were wrong from the beginning, could you not?" "I had suspicions," Priscilla admitted, "but I also saw something in you, something good and genuine that deserved better. And then you gave me better." Wesley reached across the table and took her hand. "Best decision I ever made, hiring you as my wedding planner. Best decision I ever made, falling in love with my client, even though it was completely unprofessional, especially because it was completely unprofessional." They laughed, and Penelope laughed too, not understanding the joke but happy to be included. Priscilla looked around the table at her small family, at the man she loved and the daughter they were raising together, and felt overwhelmingly grateful for the twist of fate that had brought Wesley into her life. She had spent years planning other people's happy beginnings, believing in love even when she had not found it herself. And then, in the most unexpected way possible, she had found it with the man whose wedding she was supposed to plan for someone else. Sometimes life had a sense of humor. And sometimes that humor led to the most beautiful outcomes. That evening, after Penelope was in bed, Wesley and Priscilla sat on their back porch with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I ran into Vanessa last week," Wesley said, "at a charity event. She is married now, did you know that? I heard something about that. To someone in fashion, art dealing, actually. They seemed happy. She apologized, actually, for how difficult she was during the wedding planning. Said she was so focused on the image of the wedding that she lost sight of what marriage actually meant. That is very self-aware of her. She also thanked me," Wesley smiled. "Said if I had not called off the wedding, she would never have found her current husband, who is apparently much better suited for her." "Everyone ends up where they are supposed to be," Priscilla said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Eventually." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had gone through with it, if I had married Vanessa?" "Sometimes. I think you would have been miserable. I think I would have moved on, planned other weddings, maybe even met someone else, but I do not think I would have been this happy. What we have is special. It really is." Wesley kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Priscilla Grayson." "I love you too, Wesley Grayson." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Priscilla thought about all the weddings she had planned over the years, all the couples she had helped bring together. She had always believed that weddings were about more than just a party or pretty decorations. They were about commitment, about 2 people choosing to build a life together despite all the uncertainties and challenges the world would throw at them. She had helped create hundreds of those moments for other people. But her own wedding, her own commitment, was the one that mattered most. And it had come from the most unlikely place. Millionaire hires her as wedding planner, never expected the planner would plan their wedding. That is what it had looked like from the outside. But the truth was so much richer and more complicated. Wesley had hired her to plan a wedding that should never have happened. And in the process, they had both found something neither of them was looking for but both desperately needed. 2 years later, Priscilla stood in the newly renovated community center that was part of Wesley's affordable housing complex. She was there for a very special wedding, one she had offered to plan for free. The bride was a young woman who lived in the complex, working 2 jobs to support her family while going to nursing school. The groom was a teacher at the local elementary school. They were madly in love but had almost no budget for their wedding. When Priscilla heard about them through Wesley, she immediately volunteered her services. She called in favors from vendors, negotiated discounts, and used her own connections to create something beautiful on almost no budget. The result was a warm, joy-filled celebration that proved you did not need money to have a meaningful wedding. Wesley stood beside her as they watched the couple's first dance, their faces glowing with happiness. "You are amazing," he whispered. "You know that. I just wanted to help them have a beautiful day. Everyone deserves that. This is why I love you, this right here. Your heart." Priscilla squeezed his hand. Their daughter Penelope was dancing with some of the other children, her flower girl dress already rumpled and stained. Their son, Philip, just 6 months old, was asleep in the stroller beside them. Their life was full and chaotic and absolutely perfect. "I have been thinking," Wesley said. "What if we created a foundation to help couples who cannot afford wedding expenses? You could manage it, use your expertise and connections. We could fund it through the company profits." Priscilla turned to look at him, her eyes wide. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You have always said that everyone deserves to celebrate their love, regardless of their financial situation. Let's make that happen." "Wesley, that would be incredible. Yes, absolutely yes," he grinned. "I was hoping you would say that. I already had our lawyer draw up preliminary paperwork." Priscilla laughed and kissed him, not caring who saw. "You are full of surprises. I learned from the best." They stayed at the reception until the end, helping clean up and saying goodbye to the happy couple. Driving home with their sleeping children in the backseat, Priscilla reflected on how far they had come. From that first meeting in Wesley's office, both of them trapped in situations that were not right, to building this beautiful life together. The wedding planning business continued to thrive, but now with a new purpose. The foundation launched 6 months later, funding weddings for couples who otherwise could not afford them. Priscilla trained other planners to help, creating a network of professionals who volunteered their time and expertise. The first year, they helped 50 couples. The second year, over 100. Wesley's sustainable development projects expanded, creating affordable housing and community spaces across multiple cities. He was regularly featured in architecture and business magazines, praised for his innovative approach and commitment to social responsibility. But at home, he was just Wesley, the husband who cooked breakfast on Sundays, who sang silly songs to their kids, who still looked at Priscilla like she was the most amazing person in the world. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Wesley surprised her with a trip back to the Belmore estate, the venue where she had walked through with him during those early planning days. They left the kids with Willa for the weekend and spent 2 days rediscovering the gardens and grounds, this time with no agenda except enjoying each other's company. "I remember standing here," Wesley said as they walked through the rose garden, "listening to you explain where everything would go. Thinking how perfect you were at your job, how much you cared. I was already halfway in love with you, and I did not even realize it. I remember thinking you asked really good questions," Priscilla said, "and being confused about why someone about to marry Vanessa seemed so sad. I was sad. I was trapped, and then you came along and showed me what life could actually feel like. We showed each other, Priscilla corrected. I had given up on finding this kind of love. I thought maybe it only existed in the weddings I planned for other people. And now I know it exists. I live it every day. They renewed their vows right there in the rose garden, just the two of them and the justice of the peace Wesley had secretly arranged. No guests, no elaborate ceremony, just simple promises exchanged under the same arch where Wesley was supposed to have married someone else years ago. I promise to keep building a life with you, Wesley said, to support your dreams and share your burdens, to be your partner in all things, to love you more tomorrow than I do today. I promise to keep choosing you, Priscilla said through happy tears, to remind you what matters when you get lost, to celebrate your victories and hold you through your defeats, to love you in all the ways that count. They kissed as husband and wife again, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. 10 years after they first met, Priscilla was giving a speech at a wedding industry conference. She had been invited to talk about her foundation and the work they were doing to make weddings accessible to everyone. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of wedding planners, photographers, florists, and other vendors, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. I got into wedding planning because I believe in love, she began. I believe that everyone deserves to celebrate their commitment, to have that moment where they stand in front of their community and say, this person, this is who I choose. But for a long time, I did not have that myself. I was so focused on creating those moments for others that I forgot to look for it in my own life. And then I got hired to plan a wedding that never should have happened. I watched a man I admired make the courageous choice to call it off, to admit that he was with the wrong person. And in the aftermath of that canceled wedding, I found the right person. My husband, Wesley, is here today, and I want him to come up here for a moment. Wesley looked surprised but joined her on stage. Priscilla took his hand. This man hired me to plan his wedding to someone else, she said to the audience. But instead, I ended up planning our wedding. And that unexpected twist taught me something important about our work. We are not just planning events. We are creating space for people to make the most important promises of their lives. Sometimes those promises are to the person they thought they would marry. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, those promises end up being to someone completely unexpected, someone who changes everything. The audience applauded, and several people were wiping their eyes. After the speech, dozens of people approached Priscilla wanting to know more about the foundation, wanting to volunteer or contribute. By the end of the conference, they had enough new support to double their capacity. Wesley waited for her afterward, holding a bouquet of orange blossoms. "You were incredible up there," he said, handing her the flowers. "I am so proud of you. We did this together," Priscilla said. "All of it. The business, the foundation, the life we have built. It is ours." "Ours," Wesley agreed. "And I would not change a single thing." They walked out of the convention center hand in hand, back to their hotel where their now 3 children were waiting with Willa. Penelope was 8 now, Philip was 6, and their youngest, Piper, was 3. Their house was constantly chaotic, filled with the noise and mess and joy of family life. But every night after the kids were in bed, Wesley and Priscilla still found time for each other. They sat on their porch with wine, talked about their days, made plans for the future. They were partners in the truest sense, supporting each other's dreams while building something bigger together. Priscilla continued planning weddings, though more selectively now, focusing on couples whose stories moved her. Wesley's company became a model for responsible development, creating affordable housing and sustainable communities across the country. Their foundation helped thousands of couples celebrate their love, regardless of their financial circumstances. And through it all, they loved each other with the same intensity and joy they had felt in those early days when everything was new and uncertain. They fought sometimes, of course, because that is what happens when two passionate people build a life together. But they always came back to each other, always remembered what they had promised in that rose garden on their 5th anniversary. On their 15th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party in the backyard of their home. All their friends and family were there, including several couples whose weddings Priscilla had planned over the years. The celebration was simple but beautiful, with string lights and Priscilla's favorite flowers and a cake made by the same patisserie that had provided the chocolate raspberry cake for that fateful tasting years ago. Speech. Someone called out and everyone took up the chant. Wesley and Priscilla looked at each other and laughed. They stood together, Wesley's arm around her waist. 15 years ago, Wesley began, I hired the most talented wedding planner I could find to help me with what I thought was going to be the biggest day of my life. And she was incredible at her job, so incredible that she made me realize I was planning the wrong wedding with the wrong person. To be fair, Priscilla added, you figured that out yourself. I just happened to be there when you did. You were more than just there. You showed me what a real partnership looks like, what genuine connection feels like. You woke me up to what I was missing. Wesley turned to face her. These 15 years with you have been the best of my life. You have made me a better person, a better father, a better man. And I still wake up every morning grateful that I get to spend another day with you. I love you, Priscilla said simply. Thank you for taking a chance on us, for being brave enough to call off that wedding and honest enough to tell me how you felt. Thank you for 15 years of laughter and partnership and building this beautiful life together. They kissed, and everyone cheered. The party continued late into the night, with dancing and toasts and stories shared. Priscilla danced with each of their children, with Willa, with Wesley's college friends and her business partners. But her favorite dance was the last one, when it was just her and Wesley swaying together as the string lights twinkled above them. Same time next year? Wesley asked, echoing what had become their anniversary tradition. Same time every year, Priscilla agreed, for the rest of our lives. And that is exactly what they did. Year after year they celebrated not just their wedding anniversary, but the entire journey that had brought them together. The canceled wedding that had seemed like a disaster, but turned out to be the beginning of something extraordinary. The professional relationship that had blossomed into friendship, and then love. The courage it took to choose authenticity over expectation. Priscilla continued planning weddings well into her 50s, eventually writing a book about her experiences and teaching workshops for aspiring wedding planners. She always told the same story to her students, the millionaire who hired her to plan his wedding, and how that wedding never happened but led to the greatest love of her life. Sometimes the wedding you plan is not the one that matters, she would say. Sometimes you are brought into someone's life for a completely different reason. Stay open to that. Stay open to the unexpected, because that is where the magic happens. Wesley eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations of his company, spending more time on philanthropy and mentoring young developers. He and Priscilla traveled, visited their grown children and eventually grandchildren, and continued to work together on the foundation that had helped thousands of couples celebrate their love. And every year, on the anniversary of the day, Wesley first walked into that office and hired her as his wedding planner. They went back to that park by the water. They fed the ducks and talked about everything that had happened since, about all the unexpected twists that had led them to each other and through life together. Best investment I ever made, Wesley would say every year. Hiring you. Best risk I ever took, Priscilla would respond. Falling for you. And then they would walk home hand in hand, back to the life they had built together, grateful for every moment of their unexpected, extraordinary love story. The wedding planner and the millionaire, who had started out planning the wrong wedding and ended up creating exactly the right life.